What is up, everybody? Welcome to Outcast Haven, episode number 21. That's a pretty big number for us, it feels like, but
Huge number.
huge number. I'm just happy we got here, so that's pretty cool. But tonight we are running a two-man show. It's me and Jason. Dane has life because, adult responsibilities, and Mark is up at the cabin, which is probably in the middle of nowhere. And based on the fact that he barely has internet at his house, I'm just hoping that he has running water at his cabin, right, Jason?
Zero chance of that.
Zero chance of that. That's fair.
They're bucketing the big big
double
piece of
bucket
wood here. Yep, carrying it.
If I know anybody who can do that, it's Mark, though. Like Mark seems
absolutely
like that kind of guy. So let's get this thing started. So let's talk about the market right now. I think we've started to see some unlimited out in the wild. So the market is fluctuating a little bit. I think I know for me, there was one point made this week that I thought was interesting, that I'd be interested to see your take on. But so what do you see in the market so far? Like, how do you see the market fleshing itself out now that we've got some unlimited product?
So can I start with a little funny story?
Yeah, do it.
So when Unlimited hit, this is me just paying attention so well. When Unlimited hit, we're seeing all these, welcome to Wraith boxes open, welcome to Wraith box opens. And I'm like, where are all the Arcane? Is nobody opening Arcane? Does everybody just want to open welcome to Wraith? Well, that's because I'm a moron and didn't realize that Arcane was actually released later and just came out. And I don't think I've seen any Arcane opened yet. I do know that this is us as a group predicting prices from a couple weeks ago when we did the podcast, and I was talking about $50 Enlightened Strikes. Well, they're not selling for that. They're not even close to selling. From what I've seen, people I think are now listing them for 35, but I don't know what they're selling at, but I bet you they're not even selling at that $35 mark. So I think they're getting closer to where they need to be. I saw somebody put up and I love watching the Facebook market groups. That's like our stock ticker, I guess, in this game. It's one of the best ways for us to tell what a real price is, because that's what actual people are paying for them. And somebody's got an Arknight skull cap up, and the highest offer I see is 120, which I think, I honestly think that's high. I think, it should be where we were at in July when we bought all of our legendaries, which was at $70 to $100 mark. I think that's a fair legendary in unlimited pricing.
Yeah, I think with like the boxes, the thing that people are missing a lot of times is they're like, well, that they were, when they started ticking up. Like, I think they're referencing the wrong point, because legendaries, especially, I think the real issue, right, is pricing them all, giving them a general price. Every game has its legendary or its secret rare or its majestic or its thing that's hard to chase and hard to find. But the market typically and the game typically dictates the value. So if you're going off of sheer like market pricing, people seem to be trying to price very generically across the board. Like, they're trying to say, well, a legendary is worth $100 or it's $120. The problem with that, right, is that some of those legendaries should be maybe closer to 100, but some of them really should be $60 or $70 legendaries, because at the end of the day, if it's not a meta card, then it probably dictates the price be lower. Then in Dragon Ball, a good example of that is the best secret rares in a set are going to be in that closer to 200 range. The worst might be all the way down at 60 or 70. And that's even in the sense that those are cards that are way more universal. Typically, they're not tied usually to a specific deck or archetype. Whereas in this game, like, you can't run the Skullbone Cross Wrap in anything but Ranger. So if Ranger isn't a top tier meta deck, then what's the point in charging $200 for a legendary, or even $100 for a legendary that most people aren't going to play and probably doesn't see a ton of competitive play? I know I'm a Ranger player, but I know that most people aren't out there hunting for Ranger stuff if they want to play a meta deck, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so if you're looking at like tectonic plating, like Bravo is good. Bravo is consistently tops events and does well, or a Teklo core or Teklo Foundry Heart. That's the kind of stuff, right? That the meta dictates are probably more valuable cards. And I think some of that is still the game's still fleshing itself out in terms of like the market. And I think maybe the thing that I've seen that I'm curious about your opinion on is people buying like the second like release of Crucible and selling it for like $120 a box because it's not unlimited. It's like the first print. I personally think that's really stupid. Because again, it's Crucible. It's not an alpha print. It's literally just a first print, which you to this point, right? Like most of those cards you can't they haven't there's no difference, especially in Crucible, because that's when the symbols started showing up on cards. So how do you even tell the difference between a Crucible first edition other than somebody can lie to you and tell you it's a first edition, right?
I know from when we did our box opening at Crucible and had this realization as I was sorting and putting away massive stacks of cardboard that will never be used. Massive,
Yeah.
massive stacks of cardboard from that set and from any set for that matter. The value in Crucible is as close as it's one of the few sets I would say at this point in time, just go buy singles because there's so many cards out there. I mean,
Yeah.
besides the Arknight Shard, which is a junk card in my opinion. I mean, Viscerize is the
It's
worst.
super, yeah.
Yeah, it's the worst deck. It will hopefully be good at some point in time. It can do some cool things, but that card is it's not good. The set's amazing. So don't get me wrong. Don't let me from what my opinion is, I love the set, but it was so easy to get so many cards because of such a small set run that you can get all the cards, which I like, and have full play sets. And there is plenty of full play sets everywhere. So I don't understand the value of Crucible at all. To me, that's got me bewildered of why people find there's value in Crucible. And to be honest, welcome to Wraith. I've opened probably 3-4 alpha boxes of that. There's not you have to hit pretty good to get your value and to get your monies out of Arcane and Welcome to Wraith are very hard to get your money's worth because
Yeah.
I mean, now when people opening unlimited, your Majestics, your class Majestics, I gotta say are what, $5 cards? I mean,
Yeah.
are you gonna pay unless they're foil?
Yeah, that might be the one thing that makes this game very interesting going forward. And some of it, right, will be very dependent on class structure and deck structure and how things go going forward. Because in most games, and again, we've talked about it, we know that there is a meta being established somewhere else, and I would be curious if the pricing is similar there. I know a lot of people here in the States go pricing off of Australia pricing or New Zealand pricing, but I think the interesting thing about it, right, lies in the fact that most games' value is almost completely dictated by the meta. So
Which it
a
should be.
card, which it should be, it absolutely 100% should be. If mech is the best deck, then mech cards should cost more money. That's just because it's a supply and demand thing, right? When it comes down to it, that's what I think people miss sometimes, right? It's like, well, just because they're mech doesn't mean they're better, right? But more people should want them because more people want to play top decks. That's just how it goes. Is if you play a better deck, you need those cards, and if everybody wants to play the best deck, then everybody needs those cards. Therefore, those cards go up in value because it's supply and demand. And I think that's where it'll be interesting to see what happens, right? The game needs a like more established meta to start to drive it, but that comes with player base. And maybe right now it's good that the buy-in is very small because somebody who is new buys a box. It's not crazy. They don't get crazy value, but then they need singles to fill out their deck. So then they just go, okay, cool. Yeah. Like I'll just fill out my deck with singles because it's cheaper than buying 4 boxes and hoping I hit.
Right.
The issue might be the real issue in this fact might actually end up being the fact that they need a secondary market similar to what, to be fair, like Top Deck TCG does and what Chris does over there, which is to create more structure decks. Because that's another thing that, if I'm being completely honest, my personal opinion is if you're buying $10 or $12 structure leader decks or hero decks or whatever, if you're buying those and you're selling them for $20, shame on you, because that's in no way, shape, or form healthy for the game. And it's absolutely idiotic that people should have to pay $20 for a starter deck that they're then going to have to spend $50 just to beef up to make it relatively competitive without buying a legendary. I just think it's really dumb to see people buying up these like starter decks, because that's how people get into games. Is
Yep.
like, I don't want, if I play a new game, I don't go out and buy a box because I understand pull rates, right? Like I can't build a deck out of most boxes. I need cards. I'm going to have to buy singles, but if I buy a starter deck, I have a good start, and then I can just kind of fill it out with things here and there to kind of make it more competitive. So the starter deck thing is an issue too. I'm curious if they'll reprint them or if they're just going to print new ones or what they're going to do with that.
It seems like the community is doing a good job of remaking a lot of them.
Yeah.
And what I would tell a person right now is do not buy a $20 starter deck. Do not buy one, because you could price. So number one, head over to your deck list on FabTCG's website, and you have the list of all the cards there. You could probably put one together for $5-6 because it's all pretty inexpensive commons, uncommons, and there's some, or not uncommons, and rares. So there's not like these crazy expensive cards in those starter decks. They're bulk rares and commons. And the other nice thing is when you buy one of those starter decks, that deck is competitive if you play it good. If you took a good player with a starter deck and put an average to below average player with a good meta deck, this is one of those few games where there's no autopilot on a deck. That is not a thing. It's not like Magic, where if you give me a burn deck in Magic, I haven't played it in 6 months, I will go win. And I was making fun of Tabergi. When I went into Magic Arena, I played one game with a burn deck I threw together and I won. Haven't played it for 8 months. And then I just retired at 100% victory for the year. You can't do that.
I think no, because I think in this game too, right? There's no such thing as a degenerate deck. That's the biggest gap, right? Is that I think when you look at a lot of games, the balance comes from basically like everything being degenerate. Like I always say that about Dragon Ball Super, right? The best thing about that game is everything is broken. So then nothing is broken. Like by theory, right? Like it's like if everything is broken, nothing's broken because it's all just broken. And in this game, it's the opposite. Nothing is broken. Like everything is fair and balanced. And there are some decks that are obviously stronger than others, but a good pilot often wins in this game because piloting matters maybe more so in this game than in just about any other game I've played. It rewards you for being a good pilot. Obviously you have bad hand draws. Sometimes you just draw into bad stuff, but then that can even just be bad deck building, right? Like if you take a turn offensively and you're trying to just gun somebody down, you're like, this is the turn I can win. I've got them on their back foot. And then you draw 4 defense reactions. Odds are if you play a normal amount of defense reactions in your deck, you will never draw 4. So chances are if you draw 4, you built your deck wrong because you put too many in. And I think that kind of segues, like even talking about the deck structure and stuff, segues into maybe what we wanted to talk about the second half of this podcast or more is the idea of some of the...
But before you go, before you go, this is something I want to hit on. And people are going to think I'm dumb for saying this, but I'm going to say it. The fact that somebody is bidding almost $11,000 on what has been coined the Power 12 in a game that is a year old. And there's no other way to say this. It's ridiculous. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, you take the U.S. stock market, you would have put that $10,000 in our market last week. You would have made a ton of money already. And it's a safer bet than in cardboard in a game that does not have a structured tournament scene for anywhere in the world currently.
Yeah. I think that's a classic example, right? Of to the guy who's selling it, Godspeed, my man. I salute you. To anybody willing to buy that, you are insane. And I have a sandbox in Florida that I'm willing to put on the market if you're interested.
It's just I mean, and maybe they'll be worth $1 million someday, right?
Yep.
But the
Yep.
odds of them being worth zero, I think, are greater at this
Mm-hmm.
this point in time right now, with the current state of a worldwide pandemic. The US is starting to get locked down again. I think there's 35 states that have hard restrictions again. The fact that Legendary Studios has not come up with an online format, be it webcam, be it TTS, be it Untapped, some form of online gameplay to keep a meta going, to keep people engaged, take pictures of real cards. Now Unlimited is out. I mean, as soon as Arcane dropped that second Unlimited, we should have been hammering. There should have been tournament scenes starting ready to go. And it's not. And the fact that I started playing a dead game in Force of Will, which I'm playing in a tournament on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather be playing in a Flesh and Blood tournament Saturday, but I'm playing in a webcam tournament because there is not a Flesh and Blood tournament that I can play in right now.
Yeah. I mean, the rest of us, right, like on our on our crew, like that the Outcast crew is like we're all grinding webcam tourneys for Dragon Ball Super because not only does it benefit us, right? Like if the other issue that you're going to run into is you need stores or you need TOs, you need some sort of tournament support to make it happen. And at this point, right, like that's even a struggle to get. Like some stores, that are getting it aren't even necessarily using it because they can't hold in-person stuff. And I think at some point people just need to say, look, whatever it takes to grow this game, because the value in this game from this point forward up to this point, the game's value has been an investment for a lot of people. This is the moment where the game transitions from investment opportunity to community driven, and the community needs an outlet and a way to play with the cards. And I get that people's mindset is like, well, people don't have the best cards, not everyone's going to play. But here's the thing, like you got to give people an opportunity. Like I've played some tournaments. I played a Dragon Ball Super tournament where I played just tons of super meta decks. It was a super challenging tournament, but it was a lot of fun. I played another one where I played a guy that I looked at the deck and I'm like, I have no idea what this deck does because I have never seen this leader before. And this is coming from a guy who Jason can say, like, I'm adamant about knowing card pool. Even in Dragon Ball Super that's 3 years old and has an unlimited card pool, I read databases. Like most people don't sit there and read databases. With Fab, I'm like scrolling through the database, just like, what's this ninja card do? What's this ninja card do? What I want to know. I want to know what the cards do. And it's funny to me because it's like, I get that people won't know the cards and I get that people will have a little hard time. Just give people an opportunity because a lot of people,
you have to play to know the
lot of people. Yeah. And a lot of people in this game they're card game players. They've started somewhere else and they're just transitioning to this game. So they're going to get to the point where like they just need a chance to play it to get the card pool knowledge. And I hope that at the end of the day, there is something in the works just to get people an opportunity to play. Because that's the thing is when it comes down to it, people just need access to it. If nothing else, I know like we've had people on our channel say like, hey, it's great to see the cards in play. It's a huge thing for me, right? Like it's an opportunity for them just to play the card or to see the cards in play. And I think if you did more online tournaments, you could have people stream it on, YouTube channels and stuff like that. Because that's probably the thing that makes
when you hold them in Discord, you can stream them within Discord and have everybody come in and watch. Yep. It's pretty easy to do, and then you get to watch gameplay. You get to see a player that's better than you and how they ran their deck. You can see a player worse than you and say, oh, I spotted that mistake, which also helps you become a better player. So it's very good for the community to have tournaments because, and I know I've said this 100 times, but you can't have a collectible card game with only investors. If you don't have players and you don't have tournaments, this card game will be dead. And that's just the way it is. Yeah. You have to have a reality. It is. You have to have competitive play because that's why these were created. These were created for competitive play. And that's what you have to have.
they were created to be games to play, not cards to collect, because it's not
Right.
about the chase, right? I mean, even as a kid, I think the thing people miss, right, is I don't know about you, but even as a kid, like I found ways to play games with baseball and football cards because I wanted a
Oh,
way to like make them more than just like, oh, look, I have this card. It was like, how do we play a game with this card? And you would make stuff up. So it makes
we
sense
did
that like
that
if you give us a game card, right?
absolutely. We
Yeah.
had a game with baseball cards where we used stat lines to get points, and it
Yeah.
must have been like 89 or 90. You got Barry Bonds in your stack. It was kind of like
Yeah.
war with baseball cards, but if you got
Yep.
Barry Bonds, he was just going to eat the rest of the field alive. Triples, doubles, singles, home runs. He just would wipe the field. So, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, we did that same thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the key is that it's time let the players play, right? I mean, hey, there's a great baseball reference, right? Anybody that's like my favorite commercial that baseball's had. Let the kids play, okay? It's time. Let the kids play. Like let us play. Give us a chance to play. Like that's all I want to do now. I just want to play, man. Just let me play my cards. Like, and that's
That's where
honestly,
I'm at.
yeah, I think actually that's the thing, even that's something that people miss. That I know we were talking to some locals who got to play in the webcam tournament for Dragon Ball for the first time this last weekend. And one of the things they talked about was like they played online and they've been playing online and haven't played a ton locally until just recently. And they talked about how nice it was to have an opportunity to play with their actual cards. And I know that's something for me personally. Like we play plenty of Fab. Like we get plenty of games in. The thing that I miss is like I want to play with my cards. Like I've got my cards,
Right.
my Fab cards have been in my deck boxes basically since I finished putting them together, and they just are kind of there. And it's like I want to play with my cards. Like I buy cards to play with them. I like looking at them when I play them. I like holding the cards in my hand and shuffling. Now I will say I'm gonna miss that I can't just like hover over my stack and see how many's left in my deck, and that's going to take some getting used to for sure, but
Yeah.
but I'm willing to get used to that if it means I can shuffle my cards with my hands again.
That
so
yeah.
so talking about tournaments, I think that's an important thing is when we're going into that, because we have a lot of new players coming into the game. So we'll make sure that this is obviously advertised like, hey, if you want to, if you get past the first like 15 minutes of us talking about the market, we want to talk some strategy. And I think that that's good because I know we've had players, like new players hopping on the channel, watching some of our old gameplay and things like that, and making comments about how it's good to see gameplay because they're obviously in the learning stages that we've been able to get past now when we're in more of the, hey, we're playing competitive games and stuff like that. So in your opinion, what do you think was like the first thing you learned strategy wise that was a big help to you?
The first thing that, well, I think this is like a two-parter. So number one, this is because of YouTube and because of posting videos, is read your card like 14 times and then hand it to somebody else and have them read it back to you. Because I think especially with people that have played card games a lot, you read the card quick and you're like, oh, I'm a card player. I understand this card perfectly, but I missed 2 or 3 very, very key words in there that only allow me to play it with either a class specific card or it's an attack action, not a weapon, or vice versa, or I'm using the wrong thing. So number one was reading the cards. That's number one for me. And that was off. And it's one of those things on YouTube. It's a love hate. You love the comments for the first 2-3 videos, and then if they keep coming, you're like, you sons of bitches, I know I made the mistake.
Yeah.
So it's kind of those, it's that love hate where after a while you just you get used to it, and then the play gets cleaner and you don't get any, or sometimes you'll occasionally, well, you missed 1 damage. I'm like, yep, I missed that. That's going to happen in any game.
Yeah, it'll happen in real life, right?
Yep, yep. People are going to miss. Second, I think the biggest and the hardest part of this game, and this is what separates your good, average, and great players, is your block. 100% your block and your simple math skills. and not screwing up the simple math skills when you do it 4 times in your head and then you start playing it out and you're like, how the hell did I screw up that one resource? And now I lose
Yeah.
by 1 instead of winning by 1. So that's, I
Mhm.
think the math, knowing it's like Kenny Rogers, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, you got to know when to block and know when to hold, and so that you can go full on your turn. So that would be my 2 biggest takeaways from this game is read the cards thoroughly, because there's little tiny things you will miss. And
Yeah.
then 2 is learn your blocks. So know what you're trying to accomplish on your turn so that when you do your block, you can still accomplish what you need to accomplish to keep that pressure on them without dying, of course. So
Yeah,
that's for me.
I think the best thing for me that I learned is I remember, and I don't know if you remember this, but the word that our Aussie friends used that became probably my favorite word, and I think the most important word in this game, tempo. Like
I was going to say
controlling.
Interesting. Yeah,
Interesting.
interesting.
That's for
Interesting.
that's for
That's for
that's for our
Harry.
boy Harry. Oh, Harry,
Yeah.
we love you, man. But I think tempo is so important in this game to understand because the value of tempo is very deck specific. Every deck wants to hold tempo, but different decks concede some tempo to accomplish things on their turn, and that's okay. Or certain decks, right, like Bravo and Brute obviously exist in a world where there's more block, there's more defense. So they're not necessarily ceding tempo, but their tempo is very different because they're not about holding tempo in the way that something like Ranger or Dorinthia is, right? Like Ninja needs to kind of control tempo and stay ahead because once Ninja gets behind, their combo falls apart. And then once the combo falls apart, then their game plan kind of starts to struggle because it's harder for them to regain tempo without just absorbing a big turn because they need that turn where they've got 4 cards in hand. And it's easier to keep 4 cards in hand if you are controlling the tempo and you are the one that's kind of in command of the game. And I think for me personally, the thing I learned as playing Warrior is that as a Warrior player, I want to play ahead the whole game, but I want to do it in a way that defines your turn. Like, I want to personally define your turn when I'm playing offense by just forcing you to overblock, to misblock, or to have a turn where you just go, oh no, I thought I was going to gain tempo, but I just took like 12. And now
Right.
I'm going to lose tempo. And it puts me in a place where now I'm far enough ahead that I can, in fact, give you a turn to give up a couple like damage, or I can give up 5 damage coming back to then continue to just pressure you and force you to control your hand. And the same thing is Ranger, right? Like that's effectively what Ranger does is Ranger wants to throw arrows at you that have negative effects. So that way you are forced to make a decision where you kind of cede your turn to me because you can't do anything now, or you just go, okay, well, I'm going to block it all, but now I have 1 card in hand. What am I going to do with it? And it's an interesting game where like tempo is very important in this game because in a lot of games the tempo definitely moves back and forth a lot. Like there's a lot of, like if they draw the right combo, I'm in trouble. If they don't draw the right combo, I win. And there's a lot of like there's more interaction between the tempo going more ebbing and flowing. And I feel like in this game, a good player can often just get a hold of like the tempo of the game and can, if they can pace themselves right and they know what to do when, it's very possible that they just have a stranglehold on tempo for the whole game as long as they don't draw into something really bad. And we've experienced that firsthand, right? Playing our friends, the Aussies, and who have had so much time playing the game. But I feel like that's the thing too, is like I feel like our interactions with them have proven that you can learn that tempo if you just take the time to understand and watch gameplay and learn from people who know, because they've definitely taught us how to control tempo in games way more than we ever did at the beginning.
Yeah, and to that point, I think that is why decks like Dorinthia are so strong in the current meta because
Mm-hmm.
they can take a full hit of 10 12 damage because then if they hold their hand, they can put so much more back and put the counters, but they also can take back tempo surprisingly quick with surprisingly low amount of cards. And I learned that when I played Harry and Towering Titaned into a 19 swing that you witnessed, and he
Yeah.
blocked 17 of
16,
it,
17. Yeah.
16 or 17, and still swung at me for 4 on his turn.
Yeah.
So that is, to your point of tempo, some decks are better at it than others. I think to learn it, you don't want to learn it with Dorinthia because you'll get spoiled, because it can pull tempo back relatively quick.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few decks that does a really good job of cheating tempo with the reprise action. It does a great job of cheating that out. So to me, that's one of those decks that needs tempo. And it's the same with my Wizard deck. Is in Blitz for sure, it can gain and throw it back, but learning that tempo in Wizard and Constructed is a little more difficult because you can grab it back rather quickly. The problem is I've played Harry with Wizard just because he plays Dorinthia the most, so I get a lot of reps of Dorinthia into him. He'll take some of my snapbacks. I'll use one of the card names. So he'll come at me and I'll throw 8-10 damage at him, and he'll be like, cool, you're just going to throw all that at me. I'm going to take it because, one, you have 10 more health and he can throw back 12. So I might have got 8 to his 12 plus he's up 10. So it's one of those things that I'm learning on that deck specifically of how do you gain tempo in a smart way? Because sometimes it's not always on their turn. Sometimes it has to be on your turn. So that's a great point, because it takes a while. It takes a lot of reps.
Yeah.
And I'm saying not 10, 15, but 100 games of playing a deck to learn it and seeing the different lines. Because the difference you might lose by 1, but you still, or lost by 1, you still lost. A loss is a loss, and that 1 might not be as close as you think it is. So it's very important to know that and to get the games in to learn that part.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting, right? Because it is so deck specific. And I think that's why in this game, maybe more than a lot of games, the mechanics of, we talk about this all the time, especially like with on the Tuesday live streams, we've been doing a lot lately of playing decks that we don't know, or playing each other's decks, or playing, decks that are like, hey, this is the champ deck, or the top deck, or this is a top 4 deck, whatever. So we've been playing a lot of those. And I know for me, I play exclusively Warrior and Ranger. And Warrior is the deck that I kind of became my baby, and that was the deck that I've spent the most time on. Ranger has been the deck that I've spent a lot of time on lately because I really enjoy the style of the deck and the way it feels and the way it plays. And it's interesting because playing other decks, the math on it is so different. It's painful sometimes. Like there are times where I'm sitting there, I was playing Brute, and I was about to have a stroke. I was about to have a stroke because I just couldn't figure out the sequencing on the math of because now not only am I doing math on what I have to spend, I'm doing math on cards in hand. It's like, oh, I need to wait. So I have 2 cards to discard to pay, and then I have 1. Oh no, I have my pitch,
right?
But you're like, okay, so wait, can I play this other card? Or no, I don't do. Wait, what do I? And you there's that moment where you're just borderline. You're like, I legitimately think I might have a stroke because I'm trying so hard to figure out what to do. It's just insane, which is interesting because then I think in Ranger, it's funny because I know personally for me with Ranger is more about the understanding how to spend your resources wisely and then just absolutely unload. But it's all about the sequencing in terms of making sure you have your card in arsenal. You have a resource to spend to get an arrow in arsenal so you can draw, and then you need to sequence all of your little things right so you can try to get the arrows in the right places at the right times with the right effects. And all of that stuff is important. Whereas in Warrior, I think Harry pointed out my favorite thing ever is that in Warrior, a lot of times a Warrior player will I'll just +3 and then I'll swing and then I'll, and you do a bunch of buffs beforehand before the first swing. But what's interesting about it is people Warrior is so reactive that you can actually punish people for thinking it's, there's less than there is, or it's not gonna be as punishing of a turn. And it's all about the bluff. Like there are times in Warrior where I look at my hand and I'm like, okay, I blocked a bunch. And my only concern is just keeping this one counter on the Dawnblade, and I don't think I'm going to have go again, and I don't think it's worth breaking my boots. So you just go, we'll tunic, we'll swing the Dawnblade for 4. And someone's like, I'll cards in hand. You're like, I got 2, 1 in arsenal. And it's like none of that does anything, right? But the fact that I am holding like a +3, but it has to be a before effect, right? It's an action that I need to take beforehand. Your next attack, it's +3. They don't know that. They just know I have 2 cards in hand, 1 in arsenal, and I've got a floating. And now they're just looking, they're staring down the barrel of like, let's dance. Like, let's do this thing. And Warrior it's all about bluffing. It's like it's like a good poker player is a person who's going to succeed at Warrior, because you got to be able to just kind of let someone think something bad's going to happen, and they'll either overblock and blow their whole turn trying to not let you kill them, or they'll think like, well, he didn't do anything beforehand, he must not have a way to go again, he must not have. And you're just like, yeah, no, we'll you blocked from hand, cool, we'll go ahead and glint, so we'll give it go again, we'll draw a card. And it's like, oh no. And then
that card's amazing.
It's that one with, I know Harry and I talked about like turns where you can glint and twinning is the most absurd thing in the game. And then especially like if you have like Enlightened Strike or Command and Conquer in there where you can like give something go again, like Enlightened Strike into a Dawnblade into like a glint is so oppressive, because it's just bang, 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 and you're unloading so much pressure on someone in a turn, and it's all got go again, and it all just keeps hitting, and it all just keeps hitting. And it's just it's oppressive at times, but it's all about bluffing, which is interesting because Ranger is the opposite. Most of the time in Ranger, I'm like, we're gonna buff it by 3, we're gonna buff it by 3, we're gonna buff it by 3, we're gonna throw an arrow at you. It's gonna be a 13. And if it hits, you have no ability, you have no hero ability. Or if it hits, you lose a life for every action. Or if it hits, you only get 1 action. So then it's like, here's what I did. Now what are you going to do in response to it? You're going to block 13, or you're just going to take it all and you're going to try and do something back to me? It's like, it's such a different world where it's like, I put my cards on the table. The question is, can you beat it?
Yep. And it is going from other decks into brute is probably the hardest math, just because of the discard.
Yeah,
I started with Guardian, playing Guardian, and I find that math to be pretty easy right now in Guardian. And not to say Guardian's easy to play, I just don't think it has as much thinking points as some of the other decks do. Like after I play Wizard a couple, 2-3 rounds, and then I go back to Guardian, I feel like I'm getting a little bit of a break. One, because I have 40 health and it feels amazing to have 40 health. And 2, it maybe it's just because I have that comfort level because I've played it for so long, and I've played with some of the best people in the world, that when I played against Kale and Amir, got destroyed, and learned a ton from him, just working through the deck. And that was in the early days of playing Fab. So getting that extra advice and how to run the deck made a huge difference. And so that's why it's the deck. I think that deck got hurt the most with Crucible, and why I probably don't play it as much. And by saying hurt, it just didn't get the help that the other decks got.
Yeah.
But with Monarch coming, maybe that deck comes back roaring. I'm really excited to see what happens with that, and how that will change and spike the meta, because I feel that Dorinthia's, I don't know how to nerf her, but she feels really, really strong right now. Like I picked up that deck. I've played it probably 3 times in the last week. I played it against Chris at lunch day before yesterday, and maybe it's because of watching Harry work through it so many times. It didn't feel hard to play. It just threw out some huge damages. And I got way ahead. Then Chris caught back up. He was playing an aggro dash deck. And even when he caught back up, I never felt like, oh, this is close. Even when it was 10-10 or 11-10, I just felt like, yeah, I'm not too worried about it, because I know I can throw out so much damage, and I know what's coming up, that I'm not really worried about it. And there's not many decks
ahead. Yeah. If you're just ahead a little bit, like it feels so good going into the end game with even like similar health totals with Dorinthia, because at that point you feel like you have the advantage because your turn is all based on them guessing on defense. Like you're daring them to not play a card, because I think a lot of
Yep.
times, right, like it's like, okay, cool, if I don't play a card here, they don't get reprise effects. You're like, yeah, cool. But if you don't play a card, then you just get hit. And if I have a way to give go again, then you're just screwed, because then I'm
Yep.
going to do it again. And are you really going to take the second one too, hoping to God I don't have things that I just held on to because you didn't take it? Or if someone just goes, no block, you're like, cool, we'll go ahead and use the cards that give it +3, just non-contingent on reprise. You're just like +3, +3, +3. And you're like, oh no, I've made a terrible defensive decision here.
The insane thing about that deck, if you think about it, is the fact that it swings for 6 tons of times by just paying 1 to +3, because there's plenty of +3 cards out there, and then paying 1, and that's a nerf or pop it up before you swing, and then swing for 6. That's insane. I mean, if you think about most decks, there is you swing for 6 for 2 on some stuff, but not with a deck that if it's going to really, really hurt if you don't block it like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad.
The deck it's really efficient. I think that's scary too. And then actually, I think the thing that we talked about, right, that's most underrated about Warrior is the fact that every single Warrior card blocks for 3. It's the craziest. Like, Warrior blocking for 3 might be the craziest thing in the game. The fact that they have all 3 blocks. It's absurd.
It's amazing. Yeah, because it does feel bad when you go to block, especially if you're playing Warrior and you're like, I have a 2 block in hand, which when you first play the game, and this goes back to things you learn, when you first play the game, it doesn't feel that bad. Like, oh, it's just one more. But when it's hitting for its second time because you don't have enough to block that second hit and the first one hit, and you thought you'd have enough to block, and next thing you know, the next round they're swinging for 4. So essentially you just took your 3 blocks and made them 2 blocks because they're swinging for 4 for 1 every time, which feels bad again. So then you block with 2. Well, then they reprise for +3, and now you're in that hole again where you just let that first counter on that Dawn Blade. You better figure out a way to get it off and get it off fast, because otherwise it's downhill. Yeah. And if you let 2 counters on, you might as well just grab your cards and go home.
I think once or twice, like, I've had moments where people have, something's happened. I don't know if it's just happened or if it's like a misplay or somebody just doesn't understand how absolutely critically bad that is. But I will say that I think once or twice in my Fab playing career, I've had 2 or 3 counters on it, and my God, it feels unreal to be like, spend 1, swing for 6. It's like, wait, what? Because then it doesn't matter. You can spend your whole hand, and it's very possible I still reprise over the top of it to give and then I get go again, and then now you've dumped your whole hand, and I just get a free 6 swing.
Well, especially when you have 2 reprises in hand. If you have 2 reprises in hand, you're not going to pre-do anything. Yeah, you're just okay. We'll see how many cards you're going to drop. 3 cards to block this 5 swing, because that's what it's going to take. Sometimes is you're going to have to drop 3 cards, and then sometimes you'll be like, you know what? All right, I'll live with that. You just dumped your hand, because now in the next hand I'm going to get all this back.
Yeah.
So
I think it's like, and that's where I think the key, right, is it is important. I think 100% for if you're a new player and you're looking into trying to play this game and you want to do well and you want to be competitive, this is a really important game to just play your deck and do it over and over and over and over and over. And I know that's boring sometimes. Like, if you only have one friend who plays, you just run your decks into each other over and over. Now, I will say, be careful not to skew your deck to your one friend who has the deck that beats you all the time. That's totally fair. That'll happen. Like, mentally, you're just like, I'm not losing to this deck, but it's like that deck just beats your deck, and you have to accept it. But if you have an opportunity to play multiple decks, or you play on TTS, or you can find a tournament to play in, play your deck and just get good with it, and just get really good with it, get really comfortable. I think, we made the classic, we wanted to kind of play a little bit of everything and run into everything. And, I ended up with like 4 decks built fully, and I was like, oh, this is a mistake. Like, I'm never going to be able to do this well. And that's where TTS is your best friend, because you're like, I can build 2 decks in like physically and have them, and then I just play everything else on TTS to get a feel for it, because that's a way that I can play. And strategically, this game is really important to understand your deck. That's because more so in this game than in a lot of games, or as much in this game as many other games. If you haven't played TCGs before, this is an important rule of thumb. If you have, you already know this, but I'll say it anyway. Knowing your deck well is important, because you can look at your drop and you can look at your banish and your graveyard in this game, and you can know what's in your deck still, and you can do math on it, right? Because in this game, the other thing is, because of the pitch going under, once you get a really good feel for your deck, you actually know what to pitch early game. And that becomes a really important part of it. Is early game in Ranger, if I feel like I need to aggro somebody, I'm just going to push hard, and I'm going to use my yellow arrows to spend on my red arrows to try to push hard. And then I'll finish with my yellow ones, and that's fine. In a deck where I feel like maybe the game goes a little longer, I might use my yellow arrows earlier, so that way, hopefully later game, I can set up a turn where I draw into a red arrow, a red come to fight, and a red nimbleism, and I can just mow someone down on a turn and throw an 11 at them and be like, it's an 11, dominate, good game, because that's how you win. But that all comes so much from knowing your deck and having a feel for like, okay, early game I pitch this, we're 8 turns in, I've cycled a bunch of those cards, I've got X cards a deck, and I'm not saying you're going to know exactly when. Like, it may be if you're Rain Man, I'm not. I just have a good feel for, when I've gone through half of my deck, chances are that those cards I pitched earlier are coming back to me, and it's time to know what's coming. And that's a really important part of this game, is understanding your deck in, out, upside down, because that's what gives you an opportunity to play it well late game. I know, like, early on, I don't know about you, Jason, but there were definitely times where I was like, I used all my gas early, and then late
And there's
game I was
nothing.
like, there's nothing in
Yep.
my deck, everything is blue, because I just pitched all blue. And I'm like, so that I'm just sitting there like, all of my damage is like 2s, like that's all I've got. But and that
So
also comes with understanding your deck.
yeah, and I do that with Wizard, and I've been getting better at that, where once again, I don't know exactly what's coming, but I set it up to make it easier. So a lot of times when I pitch and I'm putting them on the bottom, I will try to get a red in there, so I can go 2 blue and then my red on the bottom. So I kind of know when my deck came back around to where it's stacked, where I'm trying to go blue, blue, red, blue, blue, red. And I do that for a couple reasons. One, that if I draw into it, I kind of know where I'm at with the deck, that I have a blue and a red. So I know when I'm doing my Kano ability, I know that I'm gonna get a red card, so I can hit a little bit harder on their turn. So it'll help me decide to put pressure on more on their turn because of that. Or I'll know that I can save. I can take some damage because I'm going to be able to use my turn to put damage through, and I might have some buffs on my end that is going to buff that first card, and I know it's coming. So once again, I don't remember always exactly what cards they are, but I kind of give myself my own little smoke signal, so I know when I come around to it's a little bit more stacked to the way that I want it. So that, like you said, that takes time. First, you learn to block right, and then you just progress through the game. And we're by no means experts at it. We've just had the benefit of playing with a lot of good players from around the world, and it's made a difference.
Playing
It's
for a
helped us
long
out a
time.
ton.
I mean, yeah, I think there are a lot of people who are still getting into the game, and we're at a point where we're not getting into the game anymore. Now we're good. We were joking. I think we were joking one night of the group chat, or we were talking about something. We said, I think we've hit that point where we can no longer use the new guy experience or new guy excuse. There's a point where you have to quit saying, well, like, I'm still getting used to the game, or I'm we've only been playing for X number of months. Like, there's a certain point where you have to be like, okay, no more excuses, just win. And right. And that's like, I think we've hit that point where no more excuses, just win. We gotta, we can't make excuses for why we don't win anymore. It's just, we just need to play clean, play hard, and work hard. And
yeah. I mean,
we've,
our first Outcast video was 3 months ago on July 27th. And I want to say we were into the game for probably the month leading up to that, I would say.
Yeah.
And then the first month was us just playing into each other. So you're just learning a little bit. You're not really getting great because you're not playing against outside people that have played the game. But yeah, I mean, now we're getting close to that 6 month mark. So the
Yeah,
noob excuse is no longer viable for us. So
it's not good
now it's
anymore.
either we played good or we played like shit. So
Yep. Win or go home,
that's
baby.
the
Win or go home.
options. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I will say there is. I did see a Facebook. It's Europe, so it's like 6 a.m. here. There's a possible webcam tourney on Sunday after Thanksgiving. So I'll watch for
Nice.
that if it goes. If I'm not down
Yeah.
in Iowa at my mom's, I will try to participate in that one. So, but if anybody else wants to host tournaments, um, if it's on the weekend or in the evening, I'll be one of the first ones to sign up. That's for sure. I love this game and want to play competitively against other people and get to know more people in the community. It's been nice to get to know the people that we have, but now with Australia and New Zealand not locked down, they have no need for the online tournaments. But in the U.S. here, we very much do. So if anybody throws a tournament up, I will sign up. Go ahead and tag me in it. I'm always on Facebook, constantly on Facebook, posting stuff, throwing all our Outcasts and my Yotes gaming stuff up. So you see my
Yeah.
name, tag me. I will definitely play in the tournament.
Yeah, I think unless you have something else you want to talk about, I think that's a great way to
Yeah,
end
no, I'm
is,
good.
we love the idea of growing the game and continue to see it grow. We think the competitive scene is really important. I know just accessibility to tournaments too, right? Like people don't have locals, and that's a big part of it too. A lot of people don't have locals right now. Even people who want to play the game, they just don't have locals because they can't. Their stores aren't big enough. Their stores don't have the room for it, and it's important to have opportunities for people to play. So having an opportunity for people to play would be huge, just because it's an accessibility thing for people who right now maybe otherwise wouldn't be able to play against anybody other than their roommate or a buddy that they have a chance to play with. So I think one thing I definitely would like to say as we end is if you're listening and you have things that you would love, like topics you'd love to hear about strategy wise, I know that's something that we all work really hard to play clean, to play well. We play, if we're going to play a game, we want to play it to the absolute best. And that means just grinding and grinding and grinding. And we're willing. I know some people are get anxious about playing better players until they feel like they're better because they don't want to take a beating. Don't worry. We have taken the beatings. We have taken the licks. We've gotten absolutely hammered and whooped. So if we can share some of that experience with you and some of the strategy we've learned, let us know, in the comments, if you got something that you'd love to hear talked about strategy wise. How do you mulligan? Do you mulligan? Do you like a swing right away or not swing right away and give your opponent a mulligan? Those are interesting things to talk about. When you use equipment, how you use the equipment well, and the right times to use it. Those things. I think those are all really important things. And we'd be happy to talk about any of them, but we definitely, would love to. We would prefer to talk about the things that you, our listeners, would like to hear. So if you have something you're interested in terms of strategy, I think we can take some time now with Monarch being a little ways away. We would love to talk strategy on the pod. It's something we'd really like to do, and it's something we love to cover because the game is important to us, and we want to raise the competitive level and the play skill cap of everybody in the community. So if there's something that you're interested in that, we're happy to do what we can to help discuss it. Otherwise, we are thankful that you stuck around, you've hung out with us, and we'll see you next time.
I'm going to end on this, Blake. See that right there?
Yeah.
You can't see it well. That is Star Wars Rebellion. It's an epic battle that will partake tomorrow against me and Mason. I'm the Empire.
There you go.
I'm going to find the Rebel scum and win the game.
Always worth finding the Rebel scum. Although I play Ranger and I play Warrior, and I feel like in the world of Wraith, like those are kind of like polar opposites. Like I play the Empire and the Rebels.
Yeah,
but
yeah, it's all right. Okay. You can play.
Okay.
You can be both.
You can be both.
Cool.
You can be whatever you want to be in this game. So thank you guys for hanging out. If you haven't liked and subscribed, like and subscribe. If you got any comments about things you want to hear us talk about, we would love it. Leave it in the comments. We'll do our best to do that. Otherwise, we'll see you on Tuesday on the live stream for sure.
See you Tuesday.